Da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Woo.
Whew, I know, right? La 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 la. Welcome back to Hey Beauty. I love the fact that you and I are in spring.
Spring is in 5 days.
Spring has sprung.
Spring has sprung.
I love it. Hi guys, I am Seraphine and
And I am Chelsey Atia.
and we're back with some more Hey Beauty. And I am so into this month of March with you. Let's go right into all things March.
Yes. Okay, so we always start out with a new month with like holidays and stuff. And I found some really cute holidays, and some of them we've already missed, which is kind of sad, but we still have some in the works. So March 5th is National Day of Unplugging. It's
Unplugging.
Yes.
I like that.
It's the first Friday of every March.
Okay.
And I didn't know that. I didn't see anyone post about it. Clearly they weren't participating because they weren't unplugging. But I love that. Maybe just like use that day to just go outside, enjoy the fresh air.
Yeah, maybe even meditate a little bit.
Meditate.
Yeah.
Love that. So March 8th, we all know, is International Women's Day.
Yes.
Whoop, whoop. Girl
Yes.
power. We love it. March 13th is, I thought this was so sweet, National Canine Veterans Day.
Oh, Bubba. I
think
love
that's
that.
so
That is so
sweet.
cute.
March 17th, obviously, St. Patty's Day.
Yes, and you got a little green.
Yes,
I
it's
love
absolutely incredible Kid Day.
Okay.
Also, which
All
is
right.
the third Thursday of every March.
All right.
That's also fun, but I never participated as a kid. My parents probably tried to not tell me that holiday. March 20th is Equinox Earth Day and first day of spring and International Day of Happiness.
Oh, I like that. And what day is International Day of Happiness?
March 20th.
Okay. All
Yes,
right.
that will be, I think, that's Sunday.
Okay. That. Oh. I like
And then
that.
March 28th, you're going to know why I particularly love this. It's Respect Your Cat Day.
Oh my gosh, Prince will be like
I don't,
Mommy.
I know, like I don't already respect him. But also something that happened just last weekend that I didn't even realize was daylight savings time is
Oh my
over.
God, I had
Or is-
no idea. It was
I didn't
the
either.
first daylight savings in a long time where I like looked at the clock and I was like, huh?
Yeah, it was 7 a.m. and I was like, oh my gosh, I slept in. Like I'm always at Starbucks at 5:25 every morning. And I'm like, they're going to be worried about me.
Yeah, it's
And then I
it's
got
such
there,
it's a
it's like, okay.
funny it's just a funny thing. I don't know,
Yeah.
like springing forward and then what is it? Falling back, right?
Yeah.
I think falling back feels. I don't know why
You
I'm
get
so
an
much.
extra hour of
Yeah,
sleep. So
I'm just
that's
more
probably what's
ready
better.
for that, I guess,
Yeah.
because I like my sleep.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And this month is Aries month.
It's Aries month. So the second half of this month is we're almost to the Aries season. We're finishing up Pisces right now, but we always do our little Aries roundup of celebs. And so I'll just name a few that I found: Reese Witherspoon, Big Sean, Sarah Jessica Parker, Elton John, Diana Ross, Mariah Carey, Lady Gaga, JVN from Queer Eye by the Straight Guy, Pharrell, Kristen Stewart, Elle Fanning, Lil Nas X, Chance the Rapper, and Kourtney Kardashian.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know Kourtney Kardashian was an Aries.
Oh, you didn't?
I did not.
Oh, yeah. She's an
that
Aries all the way.
explains a lot of things.
Yes, it does.
My sister Samara is an
Oh.
Aries.
My
So
mom is too.
it's such an interesting sign. I mean, it's the ram.
Yes.
And like the
Very
traits.
passionate sign.
Yeah. What are some of the traits?
Some of the traits, strengths are courageous, determined, confident, enthusiastic, optimistic, honest, and like I said, passionate. Like I feel like I just see passion in Aries. And then some of the weakness are they're impatient, moody, short-tempered, impulsive, and aggressive. Aries likes comfortable clothes, taking on leadership roles, physical challenges, and individual sports.
I always read that Aries is the baby of all of the zodiac signs. So like,
Interesting. I could see that.
so, and then I did not know that Pisces is like the old, like, on like the crone or the
Yes.
old Merlin of the zodiac. And it kind of makes sense because my dad is an Aries and my mom is a Pisces.
No way.
And my dad is kind of like this very young feeling soul. And my mom is like this, she always loves things that are like witchy and like ancient. And she loves things about the past. She's always like reading books on it. But it's so funny. Aries are very, my sister is she definitely has her opinion. She is somebody who is super steadfast and loyal to her people. I don't know. It's an interesting sign. I don't think I've ever dated an Aries. Have you?
No, but my mom's an Aries.
So like how is it to communicate with her?
Oh, we definitely have our challenges. Aries is a fire sign. And they are, I don't know. They're, like I said, they're very passionate. They're very like, they can be stubborn in their own ways. I think. Well,
I think about rams and them locking their horns.
Yes, yeah. They want it their way.
Yeah.
But Courtney is, traditionally Aries is like really compatible with other fire signs, Sagittarius and Leos, and then also air signs, Geminis, Libras, and Aquarians. But Courtney is a Aries, and Travis Barker is Scorpio.
Wow.
I think that's a very intense relationship.
Wow.
I think that works really well. And I feel like whatever we're seeing is tame compared to whatever we don't see as far as like sexual compatibility. Yeah.
By the way, have you seen
the preview
on Hulu?
I want
my
them to have
God.
a baby so bad.
I cannot wait to see the child that those two come up with.
It's gonna be
gosh.
like they're just so, not to get like on this tangent of them, but I can feel the love and the passion with their relationship. Like it's really special. Like you wouldn't put them together, but now I can't see them with anyone else.
Yeah, I really relate in terms of the fact that she waited to get married.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, because I waited to get married, and I was very sure when I got married that I wanted to marry my husband.
Right.
And I had been in relationships to where I thought like not quite Scott Disick. I never had kids with anyone, but I definitely had serious relationships. And it's so interesting when you are at a certain age and you know that you want passion. And I think in your 40s, you really she really came into her sexuality and her confidence. I mean, she's always been confident, but she really feels like she's in her woman now.
I feel like, and I know she definitely figured this out on her own, but I feel like having a partner that really loves you for who you truly are probably helps a lot as well. Because like we see her now and I feel like she still looks perfect, but she's more normal now. Yeah. Like her body is not as like perfect as, like surgically perfect or like she's not afraid to show maybe like she's still so thin, but she's not afraid to show like maybe a little cellulite here and there. It's really
her confidence.
It's way more relatable.
It is. She's relatable, and she's also, I even just I have to like make
the booty pic the other day.
Her booty is like
it's so
hot and so
too.
cute, and I also love the fact that she is definitely the older sister.
Yeah.
Even though I know Kim tries to be, because Kim is like, such a dominating force.
She's like the matriarch of, well, besides Chris.
But I love that little thing from Variety magazine where, Kim's looking in the camera and she's like,
yeah,
you just have to get to work, bitches. Yeah. And like Courtney's like, okay, tone deaf. Like you could totally see it. And I'm
Courtney said like, I totally agree, which Courtney is notorious for not working.
She's hilarious. She's like, yeah, I totally agree. But I love that she holds her own with her sister, and she's just her own person. But I also feel like Kim took a page out of her book with her whole Pete Davidson.
She was a little jealous of all the attention Courtney and Travis were getting, but I don't think that's slowing anytime soon.
It's going to be a good show. I'm looking forward to it.
The production of it is incredible.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be next level.
They totally took it up a notch.
Yes.
So we're excited. Are you excited? You'll have to let us know.
Make sure you get your Hulu subscription.
Yes, you've got to get the Hulu. Well, we are going to go into some fun stuff today. I love books, and when we put out the episode about the 5 love languages, we saw that you guys liked it. And what I like is I like giving you like what would you call, like the Cliff Notes version of the book,
Yeah.
so that if you want to go out and read it, like you'll know from this episode.
And our takeaways from it.
Yeah,
Specifically
100%.
yours, because she read the whole thing, and I need to read it now, but I've like watched and studied several things without reading verbatim what the book is. But yeah.
It's cool. So Mark Manson wrote the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Bleep. So it is the F word. I'm going to try and not say the F word just because it flags our episodes.
Yeah.
But anyway, he kind of starts out with a very Bukowski-esque
Yes.
like intro to the book. He's, you know, if you know Bukowski, he was crude. He's a disgusting writer. He was known as like basically like an alcoholic and a gambler. He was the guy who's like, I'm not going to try. And he was unflinchingly honest with himself as being a failure. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because as a culture, we are obsessed with fulfillment and overachieving.
Absolutely.
And we're always fixated on what we're lacking.
Yeah.
And when I saw this book a few years ago, I was like, I was so turned off by it.
By the title?
Yeah. And it's because, you know, a lot of people that I know that are in the like millennial, you know, group, they have
like
this
their vibe.
They're like, oh, I F with this, I F with that, you know, and I'm like, it kind of makes me cringe because when you say the F word, it's like, it's like a hard word.
Yeah.
But now in this book, I completely now understand why he uses the word over and over and over again as a way to really hit home about how many things that are stupid that we put our energy into. Mm-hmm. And I think the F word really makes it to where you look at the things that you supposedly give an F about and then you're like, wow, I'm wasting my time.
I think as far as like the conscious choice of using that word was to get attention, is to draw attention to it. He wanted to get your attention. And by saying not giving a fuck, you really in this book figure out what you should give a
Oh, that's okay. We'll either bleep it out or we'll just be whatever. It's all right.
By not giving an F about things that shouldn't matter, you release like the mental energy to actually care about what you do. Give an F about.
It's an interesting book. So my
backwards
sister,
law.
Totally backwards law, 100%. My sister ended up sending this book to my mom.
Which sister?
Shauna. So Shauna is so I'm the oldest. It goes Samara, the one who's the Aries, and then Shauna. And Shauna is this, and then there's my youngest Solace. Shout out to you. But Shauna is the bass punk guitarist with all the little...
The Joan Jett.
The Joan Jett, who is the hairstylist. And she sent this book. And my mom was like, I really am connecting with this.
Really? Yeah. That's awesome.
It was really cool. And the reason why she sent the book to my mom is my dad is battling ALS. It is one of the most awful things to witness a person go through. And my mom's been going through a lot. And I think my mom is one of those people who actually kind of gives an F about too many things.
Yeah.
And she's kind of anxiety ridden.
Yeah.
And she's kind of used to being in a constant state of anxiety. And I think
it's addictive.
It is. And my sister really wanted to give her something, to give her like a sense of humor and to like be able to, I don't know. So back to the book. All right. So, so the thing that's so interesting about this book is, you know, I love how he goes into, you know, we have this like positivity culture.
Right.
But the thing is that no one wants to go in front of a mirror and give themselves affirmations like, you're doing so good today. Yeah. You're amazing. I'm like, on one hand, I kind of like get it if you're really at a low point.
Yeah.
But like, no one wants to be doing that every single day.
It's all in moderation, okay? Like, it's all in moderation. And honestly, like, I was really into self-help books a couple years ago, and that idea of always being positive really made my anxiety worse. And that's exactly what Mark Manson is saying. He said, if you're always focused on trying to be happy and trying to, like, be positive, then actually the opposite's going to happen. You're going to find there's a lack, and you're also going to be so fixated on making it positive that it causes you to be negative.
100%.
Because you are going to have negative thoughts. It's a normal thing. So when I finally let go of trying, like I read Gabby Bernstein.
Yeah,
that's
Gabby
it.
Bernstein. Yeah.
It caused me so much anxiety. And honestly, like I was dealing with a lot of anxiety at the time anyways, and it made it 100 times worse because I was like, oh my God, if I have one negative thought, like that's what's going to happen in my life. Like it was scary. So I really appreciated it. And it honestly reinforced how I already felt about these points. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. You know, I'm one of those people that like, I totally understand about the feedback loop from hell, where it's like you start with saying like, stop calling yourself loser, you know, like it's like you start to just get into a loop of like, oh my gosh, I'm such a loser. And oh, now I'm saying that I'm a loser, and that's even more of a loser. And oh my gosh, I'm overthinking that I'm like, you just go into this like, spiraling.
It's like a lot of pressure when, like I said, moderation. Everything is about moderation in life.
I think the other thing that is so interesting is, you know, human beings are the only creature on this planet that has such complex thoughts. Like we have thoughts about thoughts.
Right.
And the other thing is we're the only creatures on this planet that can actually conceive of our own death and can also think about a world without us in it and create like a world in our brain of like, well, this is how it will happen. So we're already so in our heads.
Yeah.
There's no other creatures that even do that, not one. And then, you know, you go into this kind of overly stressed, kind of filled with anxiety kind of way of living. And then we go into this feeling of the more that we desire positive experiences, in and of itself, that desire is a negative experience.
Exactly.
Which again, it's like wanting positive is actually turning out to be a negative experience because we're so addicted to hitting that like dopamine in our body that it loses all of its meaning, and it takes us more and more to find positivity.
Right. It's makes you way more aware of the feeling of lack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so when you talked about the backwards law, that comes from this guy, Alan Watts.
I freaking love Alan Watts. Alan Watts is so amazing. And I love, like, there's tons of music where his voiceover. He's so genius.
It's pretty cool because it's an interesting feeling about, like, again, the more you want to be rich, the poorer you feel.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the thing that blows my mind is all of this stuff we see, especially out on social media, is more and more of something and not really sitting in like where you're at and even being in the lack of something. So I guess the things that I want to kind of point out is, you know, not giving a fuck doesn't mean being indifferent. It means being comfortable with being different. And indifferent people are usually kind of afraid of the world and the repercussions of their choices. So that's why they don't make any meaningful choices.
Exactly,
so don't get it wrong. I mean, it does. Just because you don't give a fuck doesn't mean like, oh, I don't care about this world, you know? And then, you know, you got to come to this kind of decision making of what you actually should give an F about. So it's basically the willingness to stare failure in the face and basically give it the finger.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And then, you know, I think it's this way of looking at things that are unimportant in life and, you know, and taking that out and finding the stuff in life that you actually want to deal with and that matters to you. Because I think we have these big lists of all these things that we should care. We should care about, you know, if this person, like when I teach my yoga classes, you know, if this person didn't like my class, how much energy should I put into that? Obviously, it's my job. I should care to some degree. But do I take it home with me? Do I let it ruin my whole day? We have to start to think about the things in our life that we give attention to, because those are going to be the things that matter.
Yeah. And if you are choosing the things that are a priority, if you're not choosing the things that are priority, then nothing's a priority.
Exactly.
You can't put your attention to the thing that you're prioritizing. Does that make sense?
Exactly. I think the other point that they have here is you don't have to give a fuck about adversity. You must first give a fuck about something more important than adversity. So when you give an F about stupid stuff like your boyfriend's Facebook profile picture, you don't have enough meaningful things in your life.
Exactly.
Right?
Okay, that point right there like really resonated with me too, because I think about it and I'm like, if you're getting stressed out about money, then that's like not money, but how rich you are. That's the only thing you have to worry about. It's
Exactly.
like there's way bigger things than that. You know what I mean? And when I think about the times that I've gotten like, I've dealt with anxiety my whole life, but when I have like big anxiety moments, I think about it and I'm like, that's the times that I haven't had something else to be worried about.
Yeah.
That I'm fixating on this one thing. It's crazy. And I think about my mom.
Exactly. It's the things that we give power to that really don't matter.
It's crazy.
It's amazing how much time we spend on it. The other point here in this little grouping is we become more selective about the F's that we give, like as we get older.
Probably because there's more wisdom there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we start to understand.
And we get closer to death, which is what we're going to get.
Totally.
Yeah.
Which I think is basically the over kind of hanging. It's basically the thing that's up, like, you know, when you're like, okay, like there's
the overarching idea.
the overarching idea. Yeah. You can feel
like the culmination of this book.
Totally.
Exactly.
Is death is upon us. It really
death
is.
Death is one of the only certain, death and taxes are the only certain
Totally. Totally. So he goes into the story of Buddha. And basically, if you know the story of Buddha, basically the prince is protected. So Buddha, who is the prince, he's protected from suffering. Yep. He basically throws himself into suffering as he gets older, being like, oh my gosh, I was protected from all of this and now I have to experience life. But the thing is that then the suffering doesn't matter because it was literally him throwing himself into it and not organic.
Right.
It's like, well, I'm going to feel it now. So when you see this kind of this philosophy here, you go right into what Buddhism is, which is this kind of finding the in-between of life is suffering,
correct,
but what do we do with it? And how do we
choose your struggle?
Exactly. Choose your struggle. And suffering in general inspires change.
Well, it has an evolutionary usefulness to it.
Totally. I mean, pain is what basically warns us on what to pay attention to.
Exactly.
And then, you know, the beauty of where happiness comes from is actually when we solve a problem.
Yeah.
We become happy when we do something that has a positive outcome. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's where problems and discomfort, we're like, okay, we're in this. How do we maneuver out of this?
Yeah.
And to me, that in and of itself can kind of show you that, like, avoiding problems, you're going to be miserable your entire life.
Exactly.
So we go into the book a little further, and I think that a lot of people can get addicted to the feeling of happiness and the highs that it gives. Mm-hmm. And the problem is the longer that, you know, we avoid the problem, the numbing becomes greater. And when we're more numb to our problems, the problems end up growing.
Right.
I think that's one thing that I've always kind of hit myself on the hand because I'm a crier. And on one hand, you know, when I was younger, I would be like, gosh, I just wish I could control my crying. It's such a weak feeling.
Well, it's made to feel like a weakness.
Totally.
Like, it's not just that, like, that's, people look at crying and emotions as a weakness, and it's absolutely not a weakness.
Not at all.
It's a strength.
It's a strength of vulnerability. And
Absolutely.
also, I feel like when you start to turn off your ability to feel things, again, it starts to ignore the problem. You're getting used to being in a bad situation.
Yeah.
And to me, I kind of consider it a superpower, because now when I look at the situations where something hurts, I realize everything in me is saying, you know what, Seraphine, you're not in a good position here.
Yeah.
What can you do to take yourself out of it? What is true about the situation that's making you feel this way? And what are you making up in your head?
Yeah.
So to me, I never want to get to a place to where, I can take a punch on a daily basis. I don't want to be there, because again, I'm going to be taking punches all day long until I'm into a pulp. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. So decision-making based solely on emotions obviously is not healthy. I mean, we know this, but emotions never last. And our biology needs a little something more. And I feel like everything comes basically with sacrifice, and what we gain is also kind of what we end up losing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you got to choose your struggle, and you've got to figure out what kind of pain do you actually want in your life. And again, happiness requires the struggle. So I guess when we go into like even deeper into this book, we start to understand that the joy is actually in the process of your struggle. So, I think we see a lot of people who are what I call entitled.
Yes.
And these entitlement basically makes people want to feel good about themselves. And therefore, they're always thinking about themselves. And it also makes them feel like they're exceptional.
And like they deserve all the happy feelings, all the happy experiences, without having to go through the struggle of the bad experiences.
100%.
Yeah.
And
I think this chapter is called "You Are Not Special."
Yes, it is. It totally is.
No one is special.
No, they aren't. No one is special. And exceptionalism, let me get that word out, is not the new normal, but we try to see it that way, of being like, well, I'm so different.
Yeah.
I'm so different from you. I'm
like
above it all.
A big thing in today's world, I feel like.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we end up feeling worse about ourselves with all of these examples of people being exceptional. These unrealistic expectations, these standards that, we basically put ourselves up to is allowing us to fail to live up to anything. It ends up backfiring.
Yeah.
If by definition all people are extraordinary, then really no one would be considered extraordinary.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally. Something about this chapter that like really stood out to me. You have to accept like the bland and mundane parts of life, and you're going to have boring aspects of life, and that is healthy, because then you're going to also have, on the contrary, exciting parts of life. Like you go on a trip, or you fall in love, like all these exciting things happen. But you also, like, the part that I have a hard time dealing with is like sitting back and being like, this, because if I'm bored, I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong? Like if I'm bored, like what do I need to be doing to like get that excitement back? And then I'm like, this is part of life. You have to like accept that you're going, like, it's healthy to have mundane and routine. It's like the balance between routine and spontaneity. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I thought that part was really cool to hear. And
he gives this example of I believe he was a bass guitarist. I think.
So you're talking about Jimmy
of Mustaine from initially from Metallica.
Megadeth. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So this guy basically was a part of the band Metallica, and Metallica was like, you know what? You're out.
Yeah.
He decides that he is going to show Metallica. He is going to create the biggest band ever. And he actually does a pretty good job. And he comes up with Megadeth. And Megadeth was really successful. I mean, obviously, like we know who Megadeth is, but the funny thing is like, you have to think about, they talk about metrics, the things that we measure, what our success is, what is important to us. And unfortunately, I think Mr. Mustaine wanted to be Metallica. Yeah. So he couldn't be happy with Megadeth, the group that he formed. And for years and years and years later, when he was interviewed about how do you feel about being a part of Megadeth versus Metallica, he still bemoaned the fact that they kicked him out of the band and didn't really move forward.
Yeah.
And they give another example of the Beatles. And the Beatles had a drummer, Pete Best. So Pete Best was a part of the Beatles, and John and Paul and George were a little bit like, this guy's too good looking. He's not gelling with the band, and he's out. So what do? They bring Ringo in, who's older, got a big nose, and they throw him in the back, and they're like, okay, we're a lot happier with you. Now, Pete Best, when he was kicked out of the Beatles, I mean, he at first he was super upset about it.
I'm sure.
I mean, he actually sued to the Beatles for slander. He became a drunk. I mean, there was a while there where he hit low. He was struggling. But
yeah, I bet.
Then
that's hard.
He met his wife, and then he had this beautiful family. And as he got older, he came to this realization of like, I wouldn't want their life at all.
I love that.
And he's like, good for them. They created great music, but look at their families, their romances. And then honestly, I mean, we all know about John being assassinated. I mean, he's like, all this energy on them, and I get to live this beautiful life with my family. Yeah. And he put those feelings aside. So, when you look at quote unquote the metrics, if you're comparing Mustaine, who, had a really successful band with Megadeth. Yeah. And then you look at Best, who, he didn't create another band. You look at what they decided to give an F about.
Right.
And unfortunately, you look at the values of what your metrics are based on.
Exactly. And we're talking about the good and bad values.
Yeah. And I mean, think about it. Good values, honesty, vulnerability, innovation, standing up for yourself, self-respect, humility, charity, creativity, curiosity. These are good. Yeah. Bad ones, dominance, being liked by everyone, having sex with tons of people and being like, her, him. Feeling good all the time, always being the center of attention, not being alone, being rich for the sake of being rich. And I love that he throws this thing, sacrificing animals to the pagan gods. I mean, this is so his humor. It's so hilarious. You start to really understand, again, with Mustaine, he wanted to dominate the music industry. Yeah. He wanted to be the center of attention. He might have sacrificed animals to the pagan gods. I don't know with Megadeth. but when you look at Pete Best, he started to really look at, having self-respect for himself. Yeah. And then, looking like
priorities.
Yeah, priorities, being vulnerable, family, all of that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, these are like two examples he gives that I think are wonderful examples about what you should care about and how you define, what is success in your life. Uh-huh. So we go into another chapter, and they talk about your 5 values. Taking radical responsibility for everything that happens in your life. Mm-hmm. Manson says that we should do this because if we can take responsibility for everything in our life, we actually have power in our life. Yeah. Why would we want to play the victim and be all entitled, being like, oh my gosh, this is happening to me. I'm not in charge of my life. Yeah. I want to happen in my life. I want to be the person. Life isn't happening to me. I'm making life happen.
Yeah. I love that.
Then 2 is uncertainty. Acknowledge your own ignorance and cultivation of your own constant doubts. So if you're constantly in this state of like, all right, I don't know. I need to know more. I need to read more. Maybe this is wrong. These are things that keep us curious and keep us living our lives to be filled with knowledge and to be filled with meaning. Because if you know it all, I mean, at the end of the day, who cares? I mean, you might as well, if you know it all, you've been there, you've done that, then, I guess you're good.
I guess you're good.
Right? Failure, willingness to accept mistakes.
I love this one. It's a hard one for me, but that's why I love it so much.
If you're going to fail, I feel like it's okay to fail big because it's going to stay with you.
Yeah.
They have in these 5 values, they go into number 4 is rejection.
Yes.
Which I'll be honest with you, I think for the longest time that was that feeling, the feeling of not being loved, unlovable.
Right.
That has been a big part of my life. And I feel like it's only been in the last couple years to where I've been like, well, what am I really loved for? Or why am I being rejected?
Yeah.
I feel like the more people that accept you, the more that you're kind of bending for them. It's great to be loved by a lot of people, but sometimes when you are making people uncomfortable, you're making people think about things. Now, obviously, there are times where, we can offend people, or we may be out of line, or we may be just completely out of our depth. I completely have been in those situations to where, you put your foot in your mouth and you're like, okay, no wonder they're rejecting me because I sound like a total idiot. It's scary. It is scary.
It is really scary.
It doesn't feel right to be wrong, but the more that you are wrong, the more you realize how much there is to learn.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's exciting.
So exciting.
The 5th one is to contemplate your mortality. And that is that overarching theme we talked about.
Exactly, yeah.
Because if you know that we are all gonna die, then, you look at your values a lot differently.
Totally.
Things become a lot less important to you. The reason why this book, I felt so good about reading it, we end up giving a fuck about too many stupid things. Like, how many arguments have I been in with my sisters? How many times have I been like, I'm not talking to so-and-so for amount of time, blah, blah, blah. Or something stupid where, you do something for someone and they don't reciprocate in the way that you wish. We wasted time being angry.
Totally.
So, this book was so interesting, especially in this, these 5 of these 5 values, because it really made me reflect on my own life up until this point. And, it's funny, there's this Marvel, I think it's Marvel Comics that say this line of, I think it's Spider-Man. It's with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And in the book, they actually say to flip it, which I like this. With great responsibility
comes great power.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is really interesting.
It's taking responsibility for your problems. And this is also, it means to be at fault for your problems. You start to look at, oh, wait a second, I'm going to own this. I'm sorry. I want to change this. Instead of saying you go, wait a second, what can I do in this situation that I have the power of?
Yeah.
I've even seen it in my own marriage to where, you feel like a victim when you're constantly putting it on the other person. It's your problem. It's your
It doesn't
your
feel
issue.
good either.
It doesn't. And to come together and say, you know what? I'm going to own this part.
Yeah.
I'm going to own my part. Let's come together. There is an example that is about problems that we shouldn't be responsible for, but we are still responsible for them.
Yes.
So they bring up this example of if a baby was left on your doorstep, right?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't create the problem.
Yeah.
The baby's on your doorstep.
But it's your responsibility.
It's your responsibility to do something about it. So the other thing I liked was they talked about, when we talk about faults, is past tense, and responsibility is present tense.
Interesting.
I love that.
Yeah. I love that.
So it's very profound when you think about it.
It is.
By going, it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's already done and over with. But taking responsibility is like, again, choices you are currently making every second of every day. If you take responsibility for it, it's so much more empowering. And, you can blame people for your unhappiness, but you are actually the one that's responsible for your happiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he gives this example of the Simple Simon game of people trying to figure out patterns to avoid pain. So basically they had like a light flash every time in this experiment that was actually at random. But people who were in the experiment were looking at the light as a signal of a pattern of giving them a warning about how this experiment was going.
Okay.
So imagine if every time, my buzzer went off and I was touching my hair, you'd be like, the pattern is she's touching her hair, the light goes off, right?
Yeah.
So the human mind actually makes up this kind of BS to think that we found success or a pattern that makes the lights go on. It's like, this is going to be pleasurable. This is going to be bad. I am looking at this correlation of events, and this is what's going to make something bad happen, and this is what's going to bring out something positive.
Oh, interesting.
So our minds are constantly drawing associations to create some form of what? Control. We want to control the positive outcomes. We want to control the negative outcomes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we're looking to signs, the light, the way I flick my hair.
Yeah.
Or
that's crazy because that's all about like the self-help books. They're all talking about signs.
Totally.
It's total opposite of what he's saying. Which
completely.
I appreciate what he's saying better.
I do too. He literally says the brain is imperfect.
Right.
We forget things all the time. We misinterpret. We have biases to certain things and meanings that we've created in our mind. Think about when a crime happens.
Yeah.
They talk so much when investigators, lawyers have people recount something. Our brains can only take in so much information.
Right.
So then think about on a day-to-day basis when we're getting older, we're under stress, and we're trying to find all these signs, all these patterns to go, this is going to be a positive experience, this is going to be a negative.
Yeah.
So the biases in our brain is what misconstrues our reality. And we have to come to a point where we have to basically go, all of our beliefs could be wrong.
Yeah.
There is danger in being 100% certain.
Yes, he did talk about being 100% certain. And I love that idea, but I also know I have a long way to go in letting go the idea of like, I'm not certain.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's self-protection.
Yeah.
I mean, we really.
But I love that, like not defining yourself in any like certain terms.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all we do.
It's all we do.
That's
we want to put labels.
do.
We want to put labels. We want to put things in boxes.
Yeah.
We want to know that this is black, this is white, this is Hispanic, this is, and it's interesting when you start to really understand that the deeper that you look into things, the more complex it is.
Yeah.
We spend most of our life avoiding what's painful, what's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I mean, basically you're you're essentially avoiding living life. I mean, if you just sit in your room and you're paranoid about what the heck is going to go on out there.
You live in a bubble.
You live in a bubble. Mm-hmm. So, it's about taking the step outside and realizing there might be ice on the steps, but you know what? At least you exit it out.
That's true.
Oh,
I love this.
It's super cool. I think how he wraps the book up, And what I'll kind of wrap up our discussion is with this story about a friend of his who was in high school. He's 19 years old, and it's basically like cliff diving.
Yes.
And he was, smoking weed, drinking, and everyone's like, oh, are you going to jump off that? I don't know. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Mm-hmm. And he talks about at 19 years old, the most profound experience of his life was this instance. And he basically calls it like before and after in his life.
Yeah.
And his friend basically jumps off a cliff and he dies.
Wow.
And
into water?
Water.
Okay.
And he just landed wrong. And, I think it's the denial of death is probably one of the worst things that we can do.
Yeah.
I think that we when I talked earlier about human beings are really we're so unique in the way that we can conceptualize and imagine and contemplate our own death. We have this unique mental ability to be aware of our own death.
Yeah.
And we're the only creature that can imagine a world without us in it. Mm-hmm. So we have essentially death terror. Mm-hmm. So like we have this I guess not underlying, because I mean we would be dead.
Yeah.
But we have this like overhead, like of this overarching theme of like we're gonna die.
Yeah.
And then there are these two selves that we have. We have our physical self, mm-hmm. and we have our conceptual self. And the physical self, it's gonna die. This body's gonna go, but the conceptual self is what lives forever. So that's why, you see people who are obsessed with getting like a statue or a book or a building, up in their name, or they have kids, and they have this lineage. We want our influence to last past our physical self. Mm-hmm. And there's this whole chapter on the Immortality Project of like, what do we do in our lives to ensure that we will keep living?
Yeah.
Because none of us want to die.
Right.
This book in general made me think about the things that I give an F about.
Yeah.
And the things that I really hold close to my heart. And they've changed so much in these last 2 years. And I really will attribute it to before and after my dad passes.
Yeah.
I've never had anyone this close to me die. I mean, I thought my little dog Chunk was like going to tear my heart out, but watching someone really contemplate like the meaning of their life is just it's one of the biggest gifts the universe has given me, because now I look at my relationship with my family, my relationship with my friends. Mm-hmm. I've looked at my husband through such different eyes now.
Yeah.
It's so important, I think, that we really understand what our core values are, because those are the things that we should give an F about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not to get caught up in anything else but that.
I love this. I'm so excited to read this.
Yeah.
I think I have this book, so I'm probably going to start it today, and you guys should too.
Definitely.
If you've read it, like, let us know how it's impacted your life and like what your takeaways were, what really resonated with you. I love to hear that.
Definitely.
Everyone has a different experience when they read a book. So
yes, and I want to hear from you, Aries, especially about this book.
Yes, let's hear from all the Aries.
They're going to have some passionate responses for sure.
Yes.
I love it. Well, you guys, thank you so much for listening to the Hey Beauty podcast. We hope you loved this episode.
Give us a thumbs up.
Definitely.
Subscribe. Give us a
review.
Yeah. Whatever you can do.
And also, let us know what you would love to hear about on the podcast.
Yeah.
We love reading books. We love dishing, obviously, about all things that are pop culture and celebrity. But we'd like to know.
Go ahead.
We want to give you what you want.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Totally.
I want to give you what you want.
Well, thank you guys so much. As my dog eats my fingers, we'll see you guys on the other side. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.